Definitely feels like it's been quite a bit of time since we've got a chapter for Jujutsu Kaisen, but we are coming back strong with a chapter fully orientated and focused around Maki, and in its entirety, it is absolutely beautiful. You see, I've had this massive appreciation for Maki as an individual. Ever since she's been introduced to a story, she's propelled a different side of the sorcery world, the one that we weren't necessarily familiar with, and eventually it got capitalized on with a character known as Toji, kind of the pinnacle of what humans could become without cursed energy. And Maki is someone that pretty much falls directly within his projection path. She may not be on the same terms as Toji in terms of his upbringing and what he went through, but it doesn't devalue her difficulties, the hardships she faced, the trauma, the things she went through and pushed herself through to become the woman that she is today. And even being so close to death's door, she's managed to thrive and evolve into something else entirely. And when it comes to the culling games specifically, this is a playground that isn't meant for her, yet she will most likely thrive within it, which is why I'm deeply excited to see what she brings to the table. Because as much as this culling playground is going to be filled with very powerful individuals, the rules of the game don't necessarily apply to her. She is an outlier, some sort of anomaly within it because of the minimalistic cursed energy that she has, because she doesn't have a domain, because she doesn't have the strengths or qualities that would put her in comparison or the same league as Yuta or Gojo or Toji or even Yuji and Chozo. Instead, she is within a league of her own and propelling forward down a path of ultimate power that is strictly her own, which is always great to see for a character. But I absolutely love the way Akutami plays upon her, making her feel deeply relatable, showing us the struggles that she faced and continues to face, and how it pushes and drives her to become such a strong and independent person. I think a great example of all of this is the first portion of this chapter, when she encounters Naoya, a very narcissistic, misogynistic parasite that just belittles everyone around him, doubly so for women, and even more so for Maki. We get very brief segments of Maki's upbringing and how Naoya treated her, which obviously was extremely poorly, but she doesn't back down from this fight, and she's never been a character to back down from it. She holds her ground. If anything, she respectfully claps back, somewhat dethrones his ego, because he does prop it up very high, implementing Naoya and the words that he brings across, more so towards the end of their conversation, I think is a really cool way to gain perspective on the culling game before it actually begins. What I mean by this is Naoya, being the dung beetle that he is, pulls out all of the flaws that Maki has. The flaws being things from his perspective, not being able to use cursed techniques or see cursed spirits, and basically not being on the same par or level as Yuta or Megami, and having Naoya belittle that value of her only fuels her own direction even further, not only within the rest of this chapter, but most likely the next one, and the importance she will play within the culling games, which more so goes back to the idea that she is an anomaly, and that people forget that as powerful as domain expansions and curse techniques can be, Toji is one of the most powerful characters within the story. Someone that doesn't have any of that, someone that strictly uses cursed tools. The more people devalue and bring her down in that same vein of cursed energy and techniques, etc., the more her efficiency with cursed weapons and tools and herself martial arts wise and just the ability that she upholds grows and flourishes into something else entirely. So again, I am very curious on how this morphs and changes over time, especially within the culling game, but we do get to see a very small version of it, a more pure version, if you will. After this conversation with Naoya, she heads over to the Zenin family household to gain all of the cursed tools or weapons from the storehouse. This is after she's had a conversation with Megami and her confirming with him that he's now the head, and him not really buying it. He doesn't really want anything to do with it. Obviously, we know how Megami functions, but every single person she comes in contact with quite literally hopes for her downfall, or in some way, shape, or form doesn't believe in her or have faith, or just devalues her existence to such an unhealthy amount. I do think this chapter is a prime example of how toxic the Zenin family can be, and the lengths that they will go through to uphold the power that they have, but also to notch down any person that they deem unfit or not worthy to be within the Zenin family. Because of this vicious toxicity that the Zenin family holds, when she's having this conversation with Megami, which is obviously pushed in as a flashback while she's walking to get the tools, you can see how it's starting to corrode corrode her own faith, her own believability. It's affected her emotionally and mentally rather heavily, as Megami proposes the question on why she doesn't take the head of the family. She gives some legitimate answers, but the biggest one that comes through, which kind of quells Megami's curiosity and accepts the role to give her permission to go to it, is herself. That she wouldn't be able to make room for Mai. That the toxicity that the Zenin family has bred within her and inflicted upon her has taken its toll, where she questions herself constantly, where she feels like she's not worthy or at the limit where she could uphold such a title. Long story short, the disgusting abuse, emotional and mental torment that she has taken over the years is in effect. And because of this, it creates many different paths for her. One of those paths is to overcome a lot of this trauma, to overcome that abuse and that torment. And a hurdle that stands in front of her way is the person that dealt it to her, her father, Ugi. To be entirely honest, I didn't think we'd actually get this battle, because if anything, this is a representation of her fighting her trauma. The person that inflicted a majority of it, the person that doesn't care about her or Mai, now currently the person that stands in front of her way to grow, to evolve, to spread her wings. It also equally helps and doesn't help that Mai has been slayed underneath him already, which drives a whole lot of anger within her, which is entirely understandable. But when it comes to fighting sorcerers, if you cannot weaponize that anger in a calm way, it overthrows you, overcomes you, and it throws you off your balance, and you become a whole lot weaker than you were originally. Any sort of overwhelming emotion, in this case anger, can be used as a weapon, and a very powerful one, but it has to be dealt with finesse. It has to be dealt with calmness. So this in itself is a point of growth, and probably easily the hardest one that she's had to face. It's like a physical battle representing an internal battle between the conflict and the trauma that she's had and overcoming it. The person that she will be after this and how she'll be set free from it. Belittling, slaying, or even killing the hurdle and the trauma of where it comes from. The person that inflicted it on her, her father. Now the reason why he's here is because he moves the tools, and he's in collaboration with Naoya and that other guy, for some reason I cannot remember his name, to not only put the Zenin clan back on track and in good faith with other families, Jujutsu headquarters, the higher ups, but using the newfound information that the higher ups have given about Gojo specifically to actually execute and kill everyone that's trying to free him. So they're using that rule that Gojo has been banned from the sorcery world, and any sort of collaboration with him or his unsealing will be deemed a traitor, etc. So that's where they're funneling their direction. It's still a little bit loose in design, but it makes sense. It's very sneaky, deceptive, and obviously undermining a lot of individuals, but trying to uphold the reputation that they have while pulling this off is honestly rather impressive. It's obviously not going to go down that easily, especially if they chase after them with Into the Culling game. It's almost like a perfect battlefield for all of that to go down. But I guess we do get the first iteration for it, the first fight, which is obviously between Maki and her father, which brings out a pretty simple fight but beautifully drawn. Maki has kind of the pinnacle of cursed tools at the moment by Juzo. It's called Kill, and basically it takes all the curse energy and reflects it back on the user. It's pretty simple in design but super effective. But their battle comes down to a sword drawing, which is something that isn't actually mentioned all too often within Kaizen, but I guess a prime example of it would be Miwa and Kusakabe. They both used sword drawing, and to put it in its simplest forms, it's wrapping the cursed energy around your blade and allowing to draw it at incredible speeds. You can also mix it with simple domains and techniques, etc. But just the fact that Ugi implemented a technique that gives him so much attack and defense at a perfect rate while also using the sword drawing technique, which Maki obviously replicated because she too can use it just without the cursed energy. The fact that she can even compete with him is impressive already on its own. This is someone that has wrapped cursed energy within his sword to draw it 10 times or 100 times faster, and she keeps up with it while using a cursed weapon that she hasn't used before. So the fight between her and him, as simple as it is beautifully done. It's not inherently over the top, but her father does take injuries from this. His sword breaks, he gets a couple of slash wounds, but ultimately when they come to the final conclusion or the final swing for Maki to finish it, with the cursed energy that she has absorbed expelling out of the weapon, Ugi's sword reappears and slashes not only her stomach but her bandaged eye as well. Pretty badly, I assume. Enough to drop her down almost like she's been defeated, but I'm positive this is going to kind of kick off once again. With this brings the conclusion of the chapter, with Ugi showing that his sword is regrowing, Maki sustaining these injuries and dropping to her knees. But honestly, I feel like this fight is the beginning of something very new for Maki. Knowing how agile and nimble Maki can be, the fact that she was able to go face to face with her father, confronting this trauma head on with the abilities that he has, and the cursed energy and the techniques, she put up a really good first round. Undoubtedly, I feel the next chapter we will see what she is capable of when she weaponizes that anger and has some calmness to it, and how it will propel her to defeat her father. So with that being said, that is basically it. Let me know how you felt about the chapter. There was a lot of great things. Maki has gone above and beyond, and even though she's taken some pretty massive injuries on top of the life-threatening injuries that she's just healed from, her future seems rather bright. It sounds rather ironic, but what she's facing right now is kind of her past, her trauma, and hatred itself, the abuse and torment that she's gone through. There's no doubt in my mind that she will overcome it one way or another, physically, mentally, emotionally. So I'm curious to know your thoughts. But I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Drink plenty of water. New video every 3 days, and I will see you within the next one. Goodbye.